Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of Let's Learn Blades in the Dark. In this episode, we will discuss action and attribute ratings. We've talked about action ratings in numerous previous videos. However, we do need to get into exactly what they are. So there are 12 actions in the game that each have a rating of 0 to 4. So for example, hunt or finesse. These action ratings describe how good a PC is at a given action, but players decide how they are good at it. So for example, you might be good at hunt because you were taught by your father how to hunt out in the Deadlands outside of the city of Doskville. However, you could also be good at hunt because you have an exceptional sense of smell that you have refined yourself. That's all part of the PC background that is left open to the players. The action ratings are used for action rolls. So we've discussed the action roll and how the action rating is used in it. However, action ratings are also important in another way. They determine attribute ratings. The action ratings are grouped into 3 attribute groups: insight, prowess, and resolve. Attribute ratings are equal to the sum of dots in the first column of the action ratings that fall under them. So this may seem confusing, but it's very obvious once you take a look at an image from the character sheet. So in the example given in the book, the insight group has, as it always does, hunt, study, survey, and tinker underneath it. This player character has 1 dot in hunt. They have an action rating of 1 in hunt. And therefore, their attribute rating of insight is also 1. However, in prowess, which is comprised of finesse, prowl, skirmish, and wreck, they have 1 dot in prowl and 2 dots in skirmish. So because they have a dot in both prowl and skirmish, then their attribute rating is 2. And if you look over at resolve, which is comprised of attune, command, consort, and sway, they have 2 points in attune, 1 point in command, and 1 point in sway. Therefore, because they have 1 dot in attune, command, and sway, in that first column, you can see that's demarcated from the rest of them, they have a attribute rating of 3 in resolve. So the more well-rounded your character is with a particular set of actions, the better their attribute rating. So in other words, the more actions that you have or the more action ratings that have at least a value of 1 in a given attribute category, the better your attribute score is. Attribute ratings are used in resistance rolls, which we'll be getting to. And a well-rounded build seems likely to minimize stress expenditure. It's a more defensive build in a sense. So why is this the case? Well, in the first place, a well-rounded build will give you higher attribute ratings, which are going to minimize the amount of stress that you spend in resistance rolls. But they're also going to limit the number of times when you need to spend stress to avoid having to roll 2d6 and take the lowest result on a given roll, a given action roll. So both in terms of the action roll and in terms of the resistance roll, there are benefits to having a well-rounded build. However, if your character is indeed a specialist, then you should build them that way, because as you'll remember from the discussion of the action roll, the action rating that is used in the action roll is determined by the player, right? So if you have a very high action rating that you want to use again and again, because your character is a specialist in that action, you can do that. it may put you in a worse position in some circumstances, which will be determined by the GM, but you are free to build a specialist character. So there are avenues to play both a generalist and a specialist in the game, but the important thing to note is that you aren't really penalized in this game for using a generalist character the way you might be in some other games, which have very strong niche protection and which encourage hyper specialization and min-maxing of character builds. That's not really the way that Blades in the Dark is designed. So, in our next episode, we are going to talk about resistance and armor, and I will see you then.